Community dinner, July 9th, thank you. And so we're in this cleanse and we're just talking about, numbers versus reality. And, part of cleanse is like, oh, everybody wants to get their, lab work done before they're cleansed and after they're cleansed. And do my numbers look better? And do my eyes look better? And do my tongue look better? And I've had clients that their tongue and their eyes look worse after a 3-week cleanse sometimes. And they feel better, but then I'm very careful with their psychology because you have to be. Right, because they're tender. Some people are tender little kids inside that adult body. I mean, most people are. So tonight we're going to finish the last of the fourth, this introduction to evolution and reincarnation, and technically this is week 2 of my cleanse. And for anybody that does want to do a water fast, that's one of the logistics. The water fast next week, Monday through Friday. I'll be at Heartland and I'm going to do a Zoom call. If you're watching this video, I'm going to have a Zoom link. And if you email me, then you'll get the Zoom link and we'll have a daily check-in on the water fast. Mainly for support for those out there that never done it. I don't know how I'm going to feel, but it's definitely good to have support. And there's going to be at least 6 of us out in Heartland Eco Resort Institute. I think it's heartlandinstitute.com if you're watching this. It's on my website. And so was there anything burning on the cleanse that we can put on the topic board tonight besides my evolution and reincarnation with the internal milieu?
Yes.
Okay.
In and
I can do 2 other things. Plus
in and out of the challenges.
In and out challenge. Okay.
Talk about the
challenge. Pull those up.
Use of challenges, and if it's a good idea to go level 1 a little bit, then level 2, or keeping up to level 1. I mean, how bad could it be to go to level 3 where you're all water, and knowing that I found out if you're all water, you've got to take minerals and other things. Like where's places where you're stepping over the line with too creative?
All right, let me I can pull all these up at once, I believe. Okay, this will definitely be edited out, so I'll just do a little long. Blah, 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 listen to Craig. So I'm going to edit this out anyway. There's one live on the call, which is nice. So I can be a Craigism, a living Craigism. Okay, well, anybody else got anything burning? So we can I like to improv 2 or 3 things at a time here. It's quite fun.
Like I did a 7-day water cleanse last year.
Great.
And it was just distilled water with no minerals.
Wow.
And it was supervised, but I mean that's what they do.
Some places do.
That's what they do. That was at North something in Santa Rosa.
Oh yeah, I remember that place.
So you have to watch for mineral deficiency very closely.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to do it oral and saliva pH. Every time I pee, I'd be measuring the pH. Every couple of hours, I take the saliva pH. The Ragland's test to be, morning, noon, evening, probably. That's what I'm going to be doing. Temperature is not as important. I'm going to be in 100-degree heat. So the signs of mineral deficiency I could post on the website too. There's obvious potassium deficient signs, sodium, magnesium, and calcium. And there's some that cross over, especially magnesium and potassium will have some similar symptoms, and sodium and calcium, because sodium and calcium are considered more stimulating of the pair, and magnesium and potassium are more yin or relaxing. As a matter of fact, actin on the muscle fibers, actin that causes muscle contractions, calcium driven, and muscle relaxations, myosin, and that's magnesium driven. So you're gonna have a balance of the T, end up with that claw because there's too much calcium and not enough magnesium in the tissue.
And so hopefully taking more minerals will just give you the benefit of enough of everything in your bloodstream to help you balance.
Well, it's actually a good place. So calcium balance, real easy to talk about calcium balance. Calcium is involved in every other mineral and every other vitamin. It's one of those and yet the form we're being given it as, sorry, there we go. Didn't do a screen share. The form we're being given, I'm going to put up a screen share so people can see what the cleanse stuff looks like. So if you're watching this is what the cleanse link looks like, folks, and then we'll go back. So what were we just talking about? Sorry.
Calcium.
So calcium is involved, as Royal Lee puts it, and if you want to go to seleneriverpress.com, SELENE, river press, all one word, .com, there's an archives in there, and you can type in There's a Royal Lee archive specifically, actually, that's how much they're in love with Royal Lee. And when you type in calcium metabolism or calcium, and you'll get, 30 hits. He wrote for a magazine called Let's Live in the 40s and the 50s. I wasn't aware of it, but I guess it was like a good housekeeping kind of thing.
You went alive.
And you're right. And so he wrote an article about butter in that as the ultimate best fat in the world in that magazine too.
And it was all raw then. Probably, right?
There was a lot of rhetoric going around about vitamin E at the time because wheat germ oil was analogous with vitamin E in the 20s. And in the 30s, they developed a little synthetic process. And then suddenly the tocopherols from screwy vegetable oils were being used and being called vitamin E. And Royal Lee and a group of people were still fighting. There were groups still fighting for the natural vitamins, and hey, this is wrong, you're making chemical substitutes kind of thing. And the one thing I've worked out the last few weeks about that, when you're taking the form of calcium they're giving or some of the minerals they're giving, is they don't give you the enzymes with it because it's not alive. So guess what? You're enzyme deficient by taking synthetic vitamins and minerals. Because they're not giving you the live, everything that's alive has enzymes, everything that's chemically driven doesn't have enzymes. And on top of that, as David Stewart said in The Chemistry of Essential Oils, subtitle. So here's a book, a chemistry book, my favorite chemistry book. I read it for pleasure. The Chemistry of Essential Oils, subtitle, David Stewart, subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules.
Wow, nice.
So he's talking about what the cells actually see are frequencies. They don't see chemistry. Our idiotic minds think we have to do chemistry, but the cells are actually feeling their way through life and feeling the nutrients coming in as frequencies. And they open their gates and let natural frequencies in, and they close their gates and don't let the synthetic stuff absorb, which is why the RDA for calcium is 1,000 milligrams. In the standard process world, you take 300 milligrams of their raw calcium wafers from raw bone meal. Why? Because the enzymes are present and it gets into your body a lot more efficiently. So the absorption rate goes way up with these natural vitamins because you have the enzymes and the frequencies of life in them. Vitamin C has been measured on these sort of Kirlian, I forget the method, but I have it on here. The natural vitamin C molecule looks like this beautiful snowflake, and ascorbic acid looks like this brick. It has the whole Fibonacci thing, the whole, the dendritic patterns of one becoming two, becoming, where something subdivides a million times, but the ascorbic acid is missing that. And I'm watching this webinar right now on Morley Robbins. It's a free webinar they have with the root cause protocol. And he's really going back into the science and where things went wrong. Ascorbic acid directly interferes and changes the ceruloplasmin molecule, which has 21 uses with copper to control oxygen metabolism. So we're talking about oxidative stress. And I don't think it was you I was having a conversation with, but let's have this conversation about where does oxidative stress begin? At the cell level with oxygen. And so I'm not going to tell you what they did with you, John T. I probably would have done it a little differently personally, but because I'm a fan of living frequencies and stuff. And so I would be giving you green juice intravenously, and greens everywhere you can, because that's the chlorophyll-based magnesium that the red blood cell needs to control oxygen metabolism right there. And you've got heat. White blood cell count elevated means heat. It's a yang process, right? Your bone marrow is being stimulated like hell. And that's your water element out of control too, right? Because bone marrow's kidney, it's water element. So what we have to do is investigate the process that's occurring and why is your bone marrow lit up? Your body's choosing, because it differentiates red and white blood cells at the bone level. When it starts going to the bloodstream, they get differentiated, and some go to the thymus gland to become T cells, thymus cells, and some become other cells. But why is your body choosing? We'd want to see your white blood cell differential. What kind of white blood cells is your body deciding to make? What's your immunoglobulins? What do your immunoglobulins look like? Your secretory IgA and all the other immune. So we need to see hopefully they got all that in the numbers that you gave me. And so that's what you do. And what you do is you differentiate the process occurring. This guy's got too much heat. And there are herbs that can suppress that, but we don't want suppression per se. We want to get to the root reason why there's oxidative stress and causing an inflammatory process. Hey, Lars. We're doing the recording. So there's an oxidative process occurring, and there's lots of food. Help yourself. So I'm going to plug this back in with the calcium metabolism. So calcium needs to be controlled because in the wrong form, it slows down your thyroid, causes blood clumping, platelet aggregation, and then it also causes constipation, slows the bowels down. Well known, through my work of giving people calcium and seeing what happens. And the Mintran product from Standard Process is 2/3 ionized calcium and 1/3 organically bound minerals, which is seaweed and alfalfa. So when I give people that, they're constipated. And I'm like, fuck, I'm giving them seaweed and alfalfa, but 2/3 of it's ionized calcium, see? And it's the right form. It's only one step removed from the ionized form in our bloodstream. So there's another thing with calcium. One form of calcium goes into the bloodstream and the immune cells have to have it. The immune cells have to have 2 or 3 things: protein to build themselves, calcium to make the calcium wave, and vitamin C. If they don't have those 3 things, then they can't work really well. And so I've seen these electron micrographs of cells doing calcium waves, and they do a ring of calcium around a pathogen, and it goes faster and faster, and the pathogen blows up. It's like what dolphins do sometimes. They do those rings in the ocean, and the fish stuck in the ring get dizzy because they're spinning around, right? Well, the white blood cells do the same thing. They're spinning these calcium waves. I have it somewhere on this computer.
Wow,
If
fun.
you see it in the cell go,
Wow.
and imagine that occurring millions of times in the body, So if you're
Wow.
calcium deficient, they don't have that weapon at their disposal.
Wow.
So then there's the calcium that goes in your bone, which is a different form of calcium. So there's a crystalline form that goes made in your bone, and then there's an ionized form in your bloodstream and in your plasma. And to control the calcium, though, you have to have enough sodium, magnesium, and phosphorus in your bloodstream. And that's not talked about. That's the holism thing, right? You have to have enough phosphorus because phosphorus is an acid, and acid controls, dissolves things. That makes sense. Sodium tends to dissolve things in small amounts. In large amounts, it actually becomes, like beef jerky is too much salt. It stiffens things up. But little bits of salt soften stuff. And then magnesium is calcium's teeter-totter counterpart. It's its antagonist. And interestingly enough, in hair mineral analysis, in your hair minerals, when they burn your hair and look at the ratios of calcium to magnesium, that's your insulin ratio of how well your cells are regulating blood sugar in and out, the insulin gates. That's a really fascinating connection, calcium to magnesium ratio. So what people do is that they have, the hair mineral analysis is the single most valuable test to tell you how armored you are. Because your calcium levels in people that have had emotional trauma that's undealt with, their cells will hold a lot of calcium to armor themselves, because cells have individual personalities. Remember that.
Cells can get constipated.
Cells do get constipated, and that's what Jonty's, is it okay if I?
Totally, yeah.
So Jonty's iris shows a pattern of the lymphatic pearls, and there's a spleen line, and there's a spleen line in the lymph area, and there's a couple of fungal signs too. We can go over it. I have this whole thing up for one of our sessions. If it's okay with you, we could analyze you in the group on Wednesday. You can sit in actually if you want to.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing then is we just need a little more information, but the guys, the lymphatic system is like the shitter for the cells. But if the cells are constipated, plus the flow through the shitter isn't going well.
Shitter meaning like sewage system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the sewage system, if the pipes are all clogged up, then so the metaphor I have that I like to present is you have a little garbage can in your room, right? That's like your cell garbage can. Right? So then that garbage can gets full, right? And you got to bring it out to the big garbage can, which might be in the kitchen. That's like a lymph node. And then the kitchen garbage can has to go out to the outside garbage can, which outside, right? Which is sort of like the liver or the spleen. And then it's got to dump its waste out to the street. Otherwise it backs up, and then then it backs up into the house, right? That garbage can gets full, then you can't empty that one, and the cells can't empty theirs. And that's where you're stuck, I believe. Is that process is slow because you're blue-eyed like myself, and you have some signs of the cholesterol ring. So they're just signs of long-term inflammation, and then the body starts to armor and crystallize. Long-term inflammation leads to crystallization, calcification, and degeneration. But you're not to the part that's not recoverable yet, I believe. If you were not recoverable, you probably wouldn't be able to sit here with us, because you wouldn't be able to take the love. And you got blasted a few minutes ago. I was watching you, making sure you could take it. I was going to comment if you didn't.
And was I able to take it?
You took it great.
I asked his permission before I did it.
Well, that's the proper thing to do too. So that's something I'm working on. Is I have this story that I'm exhausted all the time and overwhelmed with giving all the time. And then I realized a couple of days ago through inquiry that it's a story, that I'm not allowing love to come in throughout the day. And then I have a deficit at the end of the day because I've made up a story about how much I'm giving, but I could be receiving all day. So that's where we, as healers, as givers, that's a repentance. That's like, bring it back and learn to look at someone and receive from them versus blasting them. We're all doing that to a degree as caregivers. We're used to blasting when we can be soaking up more. So the calcium is also involved in every single vitamin. You can see a relationship if you really like Thich Nhat Hanh works out those kind of relationships where if the bird tweets in Argentina, then it affects something on the North Pole. I've seen some of his, you know, see how the bird in Argentina affected this penguin in our, you know, in the North Pole. Like the connections are just, wow, I didn't think it could make a connection could be made, but there he did. He just did it.
Beautiful.
So that's where calcium is an important molecule, but you don't, each of us has a dose of the right amount. Like, and I've seen through muscle testing, some people need 1 calcium lactate a day, which is like 40 milligrams of ionized calcium. And that's all they test for and they feel fine afterwards. And then others need like 12, which is like 400 to 500 milligrams. So we're all individual at individual times. And sometimes that's where I would send somebody out to Rick Valentine out in Prunedale, out in Prunedale, because he does morphogenic field testing and he's an acupuncturist. You would love this guy, John. He's quite the mad scientist. He's one of my closest friends that I don't see very much, but Rick Valentine. There's a plug for Rick. And so what he would do is he would test he'd come into you and he comes in with this and say, okay, your field is, so you're right here. Then he'll bring in a product like, okay, let's bring in this mango. It's still got bigger. So you bring it in and you're feeling, but you're feeling from them, you're testing. And this would be another way to do this is that with that pulse test, right? You just take your pulse, 70, and then I put this out. Ideally it's in your mouth, but you could also hold it and take your pulse. And then if it goes up or down by 5, then that's what I call science. The other way, what Rick's doing is, if you're a mad scientist, empath, then great. If you're blocked and numb, not so good. Because then you're projecting what you think is good for you onto them. If they were in their shoes. Classic projection, right? So, you know, as a healer, you know, you don't want to project how you think the client should respond to their own life, right? As a healer, it's best to just hold space. Anyways, I got away. So the vitamins, and it ties in with the challenges. So type of vitamins. So is that enough for the vitamin calcium thing?
Awesome.
Okay, good. Then challenges. So if you're watching this recording, then we're on these challenge pages, and there's 3 levels. If you're not familiar with the cleanse, you go to right here, small intestine challenges, and level 1. So beginning cleansers, it really is. I was always a sort of, what's the word in school when you test out, you know, to accelerate your path, you test out of a class. I was a test out of life kind of guy. Try to bypass all the steps and, you know, and so I'd go to level 3 right away, personally, but I don't mind walking the edge of suffering and austerity because I've done it so long, even when I was young. So the level 1 people, if you're not familiar with how to do a cleanse, and I think that looking at the first starts, the basic food chart, work on that, then the weekly, maybe having the shopping list is helpful right here. And the summer and salads document is delightful, but it's not necessarily cleanse worthy, so you got to go sort through that a little bit. But then if you're thinking about, well, maybe I'll do a challenge, you know, maybe I'll do 1 challenge a week. So then you go, okay, I'm on the challenges now. Level 1, okay, let's see. Right to the group, what do I want from this cleanse? Well, anybody that's doing a cleanse and you're opening yourself up to the universe by cleansing, you want to set an intention. That's why I sent the email out a couple of times, and yeah, it was like 6 or 7 of you guys responded. Because it's for you. But then when you launch it into the group, you get, when 2 or more gather in my name energy. There I am in the midst of them. So by announcing your intention, then it comes back. But if you keep it to yourself, then you don't get the resources of the group and the universe as much, I believe. So what do I want from this cleanse? Then like, okay, well, pulse testing eliminates some foods. That looks easy. I could take my pulse for 3 foods today. That'll take me 5 minutes. All right. 4 raw, medium to large carrots. Well, how hard is it to frickin' wash a carrot up? You know, like I could do that. Let's see. Challenge number 10, 3 tablespoons of chia seeds and 1 cup of water twice a day. Oh, I could do that. Foot bath and 1 cup of Epsom salt and turmeric. These are pretty easy. So for somebody that's overwhelmed, this is not overwhelming, right?
The pulse test is different because most people don't know how to do it.
Right.
So I disagree with that one piece, that it's not something most people feel confident about.
Yeah, and the trouble is most people aren't willing to just jump in. Just like I'm a surfer, you just jump in and like, okay, I'll take my pulse. Gee, that's pretty freaking hard. Okay, now I'm gonna like put a food in my other hand and check my pulse again. It's literally that simple. I don't know why people make so complicated about it.
Because we have to hear it because it's so foreign.
How do you go like this?
They could,
We put in your mouth, ideally. That's the best way to do it.
They could do the muscle testing where you stand in front of it and you look whether if you lean forward.
It's a great one.
But what he keeps saying is it's more scientific to do the pulse. And so I just want to say it's called Arthur Coca. And you have to, the main thing is you have to have a seconds hand so that you can specifically count how many times your pulse beats in your wrist while you're watching the second hands go by. 30 seconds?
You don't want to do the times 2 thing. You want to do the full minute.
At the full minute. So you count for the full minute. And
Stopwatch.
you to do it before, so you know what your baseline is, and then you put a little bit of whatever the thing is in your mouth. You don't have to chew, you definitely don't swallow, you just have it there, and your body understands, and you take the pulse up for another minute. And then you know if it's substantially faster or slower.
Yeah, I mean 5 is Coca standard, but you know, if I was varying more than a few beats, I'd be suspicious myself.
So either faster or slower.
2 to 3 to 4 is within that statistical error range, you know. So I think that 5 is you're getting into 10% on the fringe, you know, where there's, you know, you could definitely miscount,
Yeah.
get the timer off. So you give a grace period of a few beats in there.
Sure.
Well, ideally, you're being a good scientist and you're just keeping the conditions the same. You
So
sit in
those
the chair, breathe the same, you know.
And
There,
is there a difference in what we decide we know if it's faster or slower?
I don't want to go too far into this.
Okay.
This wasn't what
I
I
just
was
want
meant to do.
people to
doing.
understand that, because
Yeah.
that's the only reason I don't like that one on level.
Yeah,
one.
but the crowd just got all scattered. So
So can I ask you about that? So it's, if you put a fruit in your field, and is it faster is better or slower is better or what?
no, you want it to be within a 5 beat range. So if you're normally
Okay.
70, this is the work they were doing in the 50s and the 60s with enzyme nutrition, but they're doing the white blood cell count after meals.
Okay.
So my guess in the Coca system is he saw this work, and then the 70s said, let's start taking pulses after meals, 30 minutes after, 60, 90, and 120, and a pulse before the meal. So you can see like where things might be off. And I did that for years and also tracked like symptoms after meals. And then I was able to isolate my 5 to 10 poisons. Well, intolerances. So like I had avocado earlier, I got a green light. But Monica offered me more. My body's like, no more. And then because I get what she gets, I get hangnails and weird stuff, pimples and stuff that tell me that I don't do well with it, plus brain fog. So yeah, the pulse test, my point is just like in spirituality, things are pretty simple. And we make up excuses why it's hard or it's difficult. And that's the work, is the storyteller that's telling us why it's difficult. Because it's really, like Monica outlined, it's actually very simple. And if you're willing to sit down and make the mistakes, who cares? It's a rough draft, you know. Oh, I made a mistake the first 3 or 4 times. Big deal. I'm going to keep jumping in. I mean, I think as a surfer, you know, or learning how to do a sport or a skill, you've got to practice. So we're sideline people. We're helicoptering above again. There's that whole thing. And so there's instructions for this, and there's video. I have a video on this. I have blown this thing up. So there's definitely resources available for that. So let's move on. Cucumbers, watching videos at level 1 stuff's, you know, 1 intermittent fast. So yeah, that's it. You know, for those of you on the recording, it's pretty easy stuff. And then ideally you're talking to somebody about what you might need and getting pushed a little bit. So, okay, skip it, level 2, skip dinner, have a liquid meal instead. That would definitely push some edges. Intermittent fasting, eat only 8 hours of the day, start at 9 and end at 5. Personal inventory, set a timer every hour, write down what you were thinking about and send me the details. So there's a spreadsheet for that, which ideally I would have a link in here and I would have more support. So we could have a little link, click right there. You click the link and go to the, so at some point, that will be someone that's coming in a few weeks. We'll be doing that work. Thank God. There's the pulse test again. So yeah, the pulse test should have a link, a little hyperlink to.
Oh, yes.
That would be
That's
good.
brilliant.
Skip dinner 1 to 3 nights a week. Oh boy, that's really going to
harder.
trigger. That's going to trigger some people.
Comfort eaters beware.
Well, I challenged a client on this one. Sit in a chair comfortably. Set a timer anywhere from 5 minutes up to 35 minutes. Breathe slow and deep. And the task is to let everything be as it is. All thoughts, all feelings, all arisings, all sensations. So I challenged this client the other day. It wasn't a client, that's right. It was one of our freedom people was visiting. And she was saying how she could never stop talking. And it was just a classic conversation. I kept asking her, well, why don't you just sit down in a chair and get curious about what might happen if you just let everything be for 5 minutes? And she went, I didn't thought of that. One of my office managers, she got so fascinated by what she saw by just letting herself be for 5 minutes that she became a meditator, an insight meditation. I mean, something broke through. And that's why we do this stuff, because we want the something to break through so our pathetic ego is out of the front seat and not controlling the show anymore. You know, we want the ego kind of in the back seat, ideally. So that's the point of that. Plant a seed about fasting for a day with no food, or to actually try the fast. I don't know what planting a seed means, so it must be an easy challenge there. Eat only red colored foods all day. That's a good one for the summer cleanse. Mono diet, eat only one thing all day. Ideas, green apple, carrots, grapes are a good one, berries, raw milk, yogurt, kefir, bone broth, fresh nut milk, psyllium clay shake. Probably, you know, the bone broth would be a better winter one, but if you're in the fog in San Francisco trying to cleanse, then that would definitely be a good mono diet for a day, you know, foggy, it's 65 degrees out, you know, like hot bone broth would be very appealing in the summer, which is their winter.
Yeah, Mark Twain said the coldest winter he ever spent was the summer in San Francisco.
Yeah.
My brother was in that Geary Street district for only, he was planning on being there for years, and he moved out after 4 months. He's like, oh, dude, I can't stand this. It's always cloudy and windy.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be on the other side, you got to be on the other side where the Candlestick or the Giants ballpark is, you know, that side of the city. Because then you get, right, right. Then you're away from the fog. Personal inventory. Topical and colon-based detoxification, clay herbal body packs. That doesn't sound too hard. But my favorite one, I think it's going to trigger the most people, would be skipping the dinner 1 to 3 nights a week. And letting everything be as it is. I think that one would be pretty juicy for some people. And then level 3, if you're really wanting to go for it. So if you're a beginner, eat all raw would be an easy one. Eat all raw all day. Raw butter would be okay. I would even say for that person, raw milk, kefir, and all that would be fine. A 1-day fast. Most people could probably pull that off. Eat only vegan 1 day. So some of these level 3s aren't too hard. Oh, here's one. This is my favorite one. Rest practice. We talked about this. Try a 1-day fast of moving where you're laying in bed all day. A rest fast. Just lay in bed all day.
I've done that.
I've done it with a girlfriend for 3 days. We slept 18 hours each of 3 days. It was wonderful. Yeah, especially in the winter. In the summer, it's harder. Eat only 6 hours of the day. Ooh, 9 to 3. Going deep day. Be in silence as much as possible. Try to be quiet without talking for an entire day. That's a good one. So there we go. Those are the challenges. So we went through the weekly stuff before. So now we're, oh, good. I'm not getting too late into the evening. So we're back to intestinal and personal evolution. I made a couple of new slides for your pleasure. I better put this up for the people to see. A quick break here from screen share. Yeah, get out of here. There you go. So this slide, oh, that's the wrong one to start with. I need some little scribble space. So I actually did a little artwork today. For me, that's actually pretty decent artwork. I'm going to claim an artistic skill, but so This is the bottom level of the living endobiont, as Gunther Enderlein and Klinghardt put it. We'll be going into that in a minute. So living endobiont is they're calling it a sort of a primal parasite that inhabited humans long ago, and it's evolving through us, as I'll tell you guys, and you'll be horrified. So mucor is the lowest form, or the lowest form of life form associated. There's a few other genus and species designation. There's a few other besides racinosis I was looking up earlier. I'll go into that later. Then as we evolve, or as it evolves through us, the next level up is Aspergillus niger, and that's a black mold right there. So this thing has a higher valence, more intelligent than this one, apparently. This one lives on mucus. This one lives on decaying matter. And Aspergillus oryzae is meso. So the meso organism has been, the electron micrographs of it, and it looks like a big snowflake, like the hidden messages in water. The meso molecule looks like that, big Aspergillus. So that's what I was trying to draw there, was this web. It's very beautiful, a snowflake. And then the next level up, so it is milieu. I looked up the spelling, so that is the spelling.
And that was an I, M-I-L-I.
That's the way they spelled it. I'm just saying, I'm going off of exactly what they had written. So then it evolves, the blue there, and the Aspergillus evolves into penicillin chrysogenum, and he mentioned 3 or 4 other species of penicillin. And that's sort of their top level where they evolved into, and it's called the endobiont, and it infected humans long ago. And it's evolving through us, as I'll go into. Endobiont, they're calling it. Gunther Enderlein and Klinghardt. So now comes the fun stuff. I'm gonna go to the screen share again, because this is the really triggering stuff. Oh my God, even I was pretty triggered. Okay, folks, get ready. This is pretty doozy stuff. So remember, as I go into this, that there's our natural reaction to something, and then there's this other part that's deeper than our conscious self, and it's living in more immediacy than we live. It's living more in the present moment. In a sense, it's always and already here. And then we have to sort of catch up to reality because we perceive slower than reality. By the time we perceive what's going on, reality's moved on to the next moment. That's why I want to be in present. So human beings are in a state of profound, this is a quote, symbiosis with a primal parasite or primal symbiont. This is fungus mucor racimosus, which Enderlein called the endobiont, and Aspergillus niger, both of which evolve cyclically in an upward or downward direction. And I wrote, this is their opinion. They should write, it seems to be this way, I believe. This endobiont, a living protein, it is claimed, infected the whole family of mammals millions of years ago. And by doing so, it did make its own evolution possible. The low stages or valences, lower form consciousness, as highly molecular proteins fulfill vital functions within living organisms. So they guarantee various stages of clotting. Isn't that interesting, this whole clotting thing going on right now? They guarantee various stages of clotting since they make up the protein content of fibrin and also thrombocytes, which are platelets. You got to be on sesame seed. I got to concentrate for you. I'm going to send you home with it tonight, because the platelets are connected to this, and we'll talk about that later. As proteins, they also guarantee blood viscosity and flowing properties of the body fluids. So you have bile, lymph, blood, plasma, snot, eye tears, mucus lining, you got vaginal, penis, anus. Where else we got? Secretions, So the flowing properties of the body fluids, and furthermore, they act as protein acid buffers, regulating the acid alkaline balance. And they have in parentheses next to as hemoglobin buffers. So that's one thing that I probably have to talk to Carl a bit more about. So a lot of people don't realize that our amino acid pool in our body regulates pH. So if we're protein deficient, we're not going to have a good pH in our system. You can drink all the alkaline water you want, but if you can't digest proteins and get them into your bloodstream as an amino acid to regulate pH, then you're not going to be healthy. I focus way more on protein with my clients. Like, if your serum protein's low, you got to get it up. Yours too low, which involves chewing and stomach acid. So we're gonna stomach acid, botanical, Pepsin, slam that stuff in there, get all that mucus out of there. So next slide down. The significance of the internal Oh, wait. Different spelling now, Monica. This is IEU. On a different page, it's a different spelling. You gotta love it. Oh boy, they're killing me. So Gunther Enderlein explains that all illnesses which afflict the human race are expressions of the upper evolution of the lower valence organisms to higher ones. All illnesses, therefore, are endobioses, and thus all illnesses are treated by altering the internal milieu of the gut. The milieu is characterized by, and I have that in one slide, by the pH, acid alkaline, the mineral content, because if you want good electrical flowing properties, right? So you want good mineral balance in your bloodstream and your nerves, because minerals conduct electricity. So one of my theories about MS and all that is heavy metals in the nervous system, and the signals get out of frequency. They bounce around because they're chaotic, and you want traces of gold and silver and calcium, all those good alkaline minerals. Then there's a protein content, which they wrote in parentheses, including free radical content. And I'm not sure what they mean. So proteins, nitrogen is viewed as Bernard Jensen called nitrogen a calming or control element. So and free radicals are out of control. So proteins somehow control free radical cascade. You would see that in your uric acid in your blood work, uric acid, cholesterol, some of the minerals, and then ceruloplasmin would be an important one to measure, especially in your case. That's the copper enzyme that has 21 different reactions to control oxygen and oxidative stress. So we definitely want to see serum copper, ceruloplasmin, serum magnesium, and hopefully we get some doctors to pay for all that because it's pretty expensive. Then there's redox potential, and that means electrons freely available. That one, redox, is used more in chemistry and science than medicine per se. So I will talk to Carl about this and report back maybe next week in a little follow-up from this redox potential. So that, and then I'll add to that, our internal milieu, or our gut, is also, it's a mucus layer, like a kombucha SCOBY, which this is wild lettuce, apple cider vinegar, and you'll see these, we have a screen share for this. You'll see these things, scobies in there. So if I shake, you want to pass this around, I'm going to shake it up, and then those will break apart and then reform. So that's what's lining your gut, something similar. If you pick one of those out, it's slimy, and there's a coating around your intestines like that. So the theory is, as these guys are putting it, that the coating around your intestines is intelligent, and that what comes in at the top, the bottom knows what's going on. I know that for a fact because when I used to overeat sweets, I started becoming aware of what was going on. I would eat something at the top and feel way down by my anus, something rumbling. It was like the signal from the guy at the top went, hey, all that sugar's coming down, man, it's a party. And then they're all, woo, party time. And lots of gas. Within 5 minutes of eating something, there's no possible way I could have gas except for energetically. So we want to be careful about what we eat because they call that catarrh, C-A-T-A-R-R-H. It's not used a whole lot anymore, but it's the same biofilm mucoid plaque. So our lining, then, as these people are putting it in evolution and reincarnation, the internal milieu, they're saying that this internal milieu, if you will, that the bugs that live in our body are drawn, because this lining is as big as a football field if you stretch it out. From mouth to anus, if you stretched out everything, all the surface area of all the villi and the intestines would spread out to the surface area of a football field, almost. That's pretty impressive. That's a lot of absorption surface. So that's a living surface. See? That's pretty cool. So there's this, back to this primal endobiont, which is, so bacteria are higher evolved or valences of the endobiont or of other cyclogenic evolutionary series, mucorracemiosis and Aspergillus niger cycles. The cycle of penicillin, and they have penicillin notatum and penicillin roqueforti, so there's Roquefort in there, as well as Aspergillus ruber, mucor musato, Candida paralipsosis, and Candida albicans. Lots of different candidas in there. Particular bacteria belong to each of these cycles. So the bacteria and the fungus are tied in together, which is exactly what kefir and kombucha is. It's bacteria and fungus working together. The appropriate isopathic remedy, which is in their system, it's like a homeopathic, is capable of changing the bacterium's ability to be a pathogen and taking it to a different evolutionary upward spiral. Goes on to say this antibiotic treatment, contrary to normal orthodox medical thinking, is not an antibiotic per se, but it's the downward evolutionary movement of the bacterium in question to a lower valency and a less pathogenic form. So the bacteria themselves change their surface structure, but remain alive. This does not result in antigenic or toxic bacterial waste, as in the case with medical antibiotics, but rather it leaves behind the symbiont apathogenic bacteria and maybe valences that are even lower than the ones they would have treated with their particular, it sounds like some kind of herbal or homeopathic antibiotic. And here's a quote I put in for those of you live, it's right on the screen right now. In bolded, underlined, bacteria are not fixed entities which develop the same illness, but they are constantly mutating. Thus, the human being is in symbiosis with the most intensive kind of a world with bacteria and all kinds of microorganisms, which is constantly changing moment to moment. And according to the human being's milieu, diet, acid alkaline status. Remember, this thing in us develops from our body's own proteins. So both in nature and within the human body, bacteria move one form or evolutionary stage to another, constantly changing their pathogenicity, their ability to be a pathogen, according to the metabolic milieu. The consequence of this is that we must not regard bacteria and viruses and fungi as alien, but as a part of ourselves. As the internal milieu is corrected, so they can be changed in regards to their pathogenicity. We better stop there for any questions. That's kind of a lot to take in.
Yeah, that's an
I
understanding.
can follow all that, but I don't think you guys can.
I don't think so.
So let's go back to questions then and discuss this. So the bacteria are constantly mutating. They're involved with bacteria and viruses and fungi. They're not alien, but they're part of us. And they change us according to what we choose to eat. So there's back to the chooser thing. So we think we're choosing. But according to my friend who told me this before I knew anything about anything in 1995, he said, we're walking around the farmer's market and he looked at me and he goes, he might have been high, I don't remember, but he goes, hey, I don't think we're choosing our food. And I was really kind of like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I think our food's choosing us. I went, wow, I never did a turnaround like that before. You mean the grape's telling me to eat it? And he's like, I think so. I never did that kind of reframe before. Like, wow, thanks, Ed. That was Ed Brule, my natural flavors partner. I'm like, Ed, thanks. Like, wow. So that's the imagination part, the creativity part that's missing in medicine. We don't turn things on their head like that and go, oh, wow. So what you're seeing in the world with COVID, then, what is that telling us? I mean, Zach Bush talks about it. It's part of our evolution. Viruses are part of evolution. And by the time they've named the Delta variant, nature's made 10 billion variants, and they just choose one out of their hat. It makes me sick and disgusted as a scientist. You know? It's like, it's insulting that they could get away with that.
Yep.
So, okay.
Or we could say it makes me insightful.
Right,
Oh.
insightful.
Nice.
So any specific
Wait,
question?
all of those.
Any specific questions about this bacteria changing or?
Well, I want to just explore a moment about the food choosing us, because I've always had that. I mean, if I see chocolate, I want it.
Okay, let's break that apart.
Yeah.
So since I was about 5 or 6, I've been studying this literally most of my life. Why did that thought just pop in my head?
Right.
That's my question that's been going on in me for 50 years.
Right.
Why did I just think that?
Mhm.
So that means there's something else planting the thought.
Mhm.
So what is it? According to these guys, it's our bugs.
Well, and maybe it's more than one thing. I mean, inspiration.
Of course it is. But our
artists-
puny brains can't only handle a few things at a time.
Yeah.
The totality is affecting our behavior, of course. But they're making a premise here that's never been explored much. Right? Their premise is that we're being driven by behaviors and desires that are not our own, but we think they're ours.
Mhm.
That's their premise.
It's a good one, and it's a very interesting conversation, no doubt.
And the world as we know it is gone. You know, the world of nature that we once knew as humans is gone. And so we're in this lower valence world in a lot of ways. The universe, however, is bigger than ever and more beautiful than ever. It's just that we've been, you know, this dumbed down planet. So now what we have to do is draw on spirit a little more while these earth suits suffer and live a little less. Really, we're cooking pretty good. This age was sent to end in fire. The last age of the earth ended in water. So EMFs and 5G and computers, it's all fire. It's all fire. And this age is ending in fire. I don't think we're all going to die, but. So we don't know. There's that question mark that should be in our heads, like, you know, especially if we're craving food when we're up late. And that's definitely suspect.
Mhm.
I had to fight it off last night, as a matter of fact. It was like, I've been in this pattern of eating late because I've been not taking care of myself and taking care of everybody else. And I got home late, and then suddenly it's like, I'm not hungry till 9 or 10, and then that's too late to be eating. But that's more the bugs talking. So it's very suspicious when we want to have food, especially when we've eaten dinner and then 10 o'clock rolls around, and I hear it from about 2/3 of my clients.
Well, not so suspicious if we're watching something, because everything we're watching is embedded with bait to get us to want to eat,
Oh,
to get us to do things that are unhealthy.
you know what the popcorn thing in the movie
Hmm?
years ago, right?
No.
When you freeze and slow down those frames, you can. Oh, that was scary when I first ran into that one.
Oh, yeah. But more importantly, what Katie just said is important, because even if it's something that isn't infiltrated, we're so used to having the impetus to eat. I mean, why is popcorn such a thing always at movie theaters and whatever else? Because you have to just keep eating it to get anywhere. And once you get in the habit of eating, it's hard to stop. So we are so susceptible to suggestion, and we have been led to eat while we watch things by our culture. So it doesn't
Right.
have to be that Del Bigtree is actually doing something if 90% of everything else that we watch is trying to get us to eat and eat unhealthy stuff.
We're sovereign. Ultimately, we're kind of not running the show. So that's what I'm looking at. Like when I'm watching Jonty, whether he's receiving or not, it's like I'm watching the part of him that's more immediate than Jonty. And I'm watching the part of me that's watching me. What's really a messed up one is becoming aware that you're aware. That's like 2 octaves back in consciousness. I'm aware, but I'm aware. Wow. But that's where the alchemists call that a wonderful poetic word for that. It's like the primal soup of creativity. They call it the eternal Tao in Taoism, pointing at this raw soup of creative energy. And then it has to focus itself down into what we call me, or a thought. And there's these people that die, like myself, that have been out of their body and they still have consciousness and still tell people what happened around them. So that's where the blind person that can see without eyes makes perfect sense, because they're seeing from a different place.
Yeah.
And
a hypnotized person who can see somebody's watch behind their daughter or something like that.
right, yes. These things that you scratch your head and you go, how can you possibly know that? Because consciousness isn't in this head.
Yeah.
We think it is, but it's not. And so I'll move to the next slide because it kind of just makes the same point again in a different way. It's precisely these bacteria within the human organism that have the fastest regeneration rate of anything in the body. They renew themselves within just a few days. That means that half the cells or more within a human being renew themselves within just a few days period. Our gut lining is renewed every 3 to 7 days. So the Golden Gate Bridge, how the painters go, the painter thing never stops. By the time it gets to one side, they got to turn back around and go the other way. And that's how our gut is. By the time part of the gut's always renewing. That's why the tongue is an important thing to look at, right? That's why all the Chinese doctors are always looking at it. How's your renewal rate? Oh, you got cracks in your tongue. That means you're not renewing cells in your gut well. It's my single most important test for the gut lining, because it's so revealing, because it's the same cells all the way down, epithelial cells. We were looking at a client earlier, me and Monica, where I won't mention her name, but her fingers were all fried. And I believe that's another process of heat expressing itself in the organ, baking off the critters, because the new critters evolving up, because she's changed her diet and is evolving, right? And maybe Jonty and maybe all of us in some ways So renewal. This clarifies that the bugs that live in us are the vehicles of the energies and of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is quite a statement. Wilhelm Reich was involved in this. He called them bions, endobionts, B-I-O-N-S. And Reich was one who developed orgonite and the orgone chambers. And the orgone chamber was just, it would be like wool and metal and wood, and they would enclose people in these orgone chambers and cure cancer back in the 40s. And then he was jailed for practicing medicine without a license because he was a German psychiatrist. And then he died suspiciously in prison, of course. We'll say there's no conspiracies, and some of the greatest people have ever lived have all died suspiciously, including recently. There's just thousands in the last few years that died suspiciously.
Well, before COVID, there's like 130 eminent biologists and researchers that died suddenly.
Oh, yeah, very convenient. So does that mean that the evil people running the earth, their bugs are controlling their behavior because their bugs are trying to take over the bugs that are in us, is the question. They've got evil bugs that want to kill the good guy bugs. If you look at it like that, it's kind of scary. Like, there's a little like, instead of bugs living in me, they're fighting the other bugs.
Bugs have anything to do with the lack of empathy that the controllers have?
You know, that's an interesting question. Non-empathizing bugs?
Those controlling bugs have no empathy.
We'll go through a few more of this. Enderlein's protite was identical to the globin in hemoglobin. This is weird. Oh, I gotta see what they're saying. So this part of ourself is normal, and this is constantly mutating human cells and constantly mutating bodily fluids. We are given these particles from these primal parasites at birth, and they later survive us when we die and are returned to nature as a part of ourselves decaying. Similarly, they can also evolve upwardly from plant cells, as proven by Reich. This would illustrate once again how close the link is between the human red blood cell and the basic units of bacteria. At the same time, we demonstrate the close link between the primal parasite and the vital processes in our body, such as oxygen uptake and the acquisition of ATP. Wow, it ties right into what we're going through right now. They're suppressing the human evolution for someone's, benefit. Oh, that was the last slide. Very good. That was the last slide, actually. Great. There's a couple of, if you're watching the video, there's a couple of links here, and there's a really good Lyme article here. There's a really good article about symbiotic foods, and there's another fungus one. And I have a few foods here. So some of the out-of-the-box fungal infection ones, calendula flowers. So the marigold flowers are very good for fungus. Chamomile, which you wouldn't think. Chamomile, you wouldn't think. Lemongrass, you wouldn't think.
Chamomile and what form?
Fungus. These are all fungal infection plants that you wouldn't think would be good for fungus. Turmeric and black walnut. You know, I was talking about the black walnut, the green black walnut. So the black walnut whole and the black walnut leaf would be good for fungus. Here's a few for worms you might not have known. Pumpkin seeds, pineapple, papaya. And then you got your classic clove and garlic and ginger. For virus, licorice is coming up for virus and fungus. I wouldn't have thought of licorice for either one of those, but that's a pretty tasty herb. Virus is juniper berry. Lemon balm is one of those sleeper virus things. St. John's wort's not on this. St. John's wort's a very good antiviral. Very good antiviral. So there's this virus thing, and St. John's also called an antidepressant. Gee, I wonder if viruses make you depressed. They're depressing microorganisms, expressing depression. That's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I used to get herpes, and I don't get it anymore, fortunately. But like the day before I broke out, I would be really depressed.
Wow. I used to get a herpes sore right here, and there would be. So I worked out how viruses work was, standard process validated this, was I'd always have nerve exhaustion from overdoing it.
Mhm.
And then there would be the buzz right there, like a little,
Yeah.
zzz, and then I knew it was coming. And then when I ran into standard process 13 years ago, I had my last one, and it was, you need bioflavonoids, which they have Cyruta Plus for that. You need ionized calcium to feed the immune system and take care of the virus. So it's calcium lactate. They use Cataplex F, the vitamin F, to disperse the nutrients into the periphery. That's the action of F. And then you need a nerve restorative, which I use Nebaton, which has St. John's wort in it from MediHerb, and that's skullcap, St. John's wort, saffron, and Schisandra berry. Very, very good product. I'm actually taking it right now. Again, I go on and off of it. I just love this product. I adore it. So when a herpes infection comes along, then you mega dose every hour, ionized calcium, Cyruta Plus, Cataplex F, and then maybe a half a pill of Nebaton. Or if you just want St. John's wort, you could just do tinctures of St. John's wort. And lemon balm's tasty. If you're growing lemon balm, do lemon balm tea all day. You know, get iced tea with it.
What about L-lysine?
I got away from that because it's another synthetic amino acid that requires enzymes to be processed, and so I'd rather use those enzymes fighting the problem. I mean, sure, it works for some people, definitely. There's a couple on here for catarrh. Oats lower mucus, but they cause mucus in others. So that's fascinating. Chamomile takes care of excessive catarrh. Colt's foot is an herb. Echinacea, elderflower, eyebright, fenugreek. Goldenrod. I know there's goldenrod in this county, but I need to figure out where it is. It's a great kidney herb, and it's good for mucus, it's saying. Golden seal is a sleeper. It's antimicrobial across the board, but you can't use golden seal more than a few weeks at a time. Grindelia is an interesting flower. It grows on by the river, by the San Lorenzo River, and they have these daisy-looking yellow, but they have this white sticky goo that comes out of them, and this is a specific for, it dissolves. It's a resin, so the resin will glom onto your mucus and carry it out of your body.
Oh, cool.
Grindelia. Hyssop, which is a nice herb. Iceland moss, mallow, so the marshmallow family, mullein, peppermint, pine. So there's that pine thing. There's your pine thing showing up on here. Violet and poke. And that's what we're going to give you. Poke root, red root, figwort, cleavers, echinacea, mullein, probably one other tonic in those. So that's some helpful list of plants. And then I have a little plug on Jim Humble and MMS, which I guess they're calling, I guess the CDS is what they're using now. It's a little easier on the body than the MMS, a little hard on the stomach.
What is CDS?
It's the gas from MMS put into a bottle. Bruce Tanner was telling me about it. So you activate the MMS in a container, and then you have either hot water or there's like a bowl in another larger bowl of water.
Distilling.
And then, you're activating the MMS, and then the gas goes up and then into the fluid, and then you somehow concentrate that. It's really fascinating.
So
Bruce Tanner knows the whole thing, and Paul Robbins knows the whole thing.
And it's a liquid. Take it as a liquid.
It looks like a liquid in a jar, but it's actually a concentrated gas, I guess.
Hey, Michael Black was telling me on Thursday that he's just read some research where they're injecting a tumor with MMS, chlorine dioxide, and it reverts the tumor cells into normal cells in 4 days.
Oh.
So there's the oxygen thing again. So when we don't get enough oxygen, there's the bacteria. Our mitochondria are bacterial parasites that got into our cells. And so they need oxygen to run the mitochondria properly. And if we're running an anaerobic, which cancer is, then the body's ability it goes anaerobic, and the body's literally energy levels drop 100-fold because the mitochondrial aren't working anymore. And so by injecting the chlorine dioxide in there, that's what it looks like. It's chlorine and 2 oxygen molecules. The oxygen gets into those cells, and the cell starts to go, I don't need to be a zombie anymore. Would be my theory. Because now there's oxidative metabolism occurring. But I would also be getting zinc and copper, little bits of iron, definitely lots of green juices. And I like the old Gershon protocol. I think you do liver juice and wheatgrass juice. And you might even, if you're deficient, you might even do like a raw butter, raw honey, something. If you could tolerate the dairy. It's just that when a position like Jaunty, like you got to be real careful about what you put in that body, because his immune cells are already like, they're like cops on 20 cups of coffee, basically. And that's what this guy's immune system is about. So we want to calm down the cops, you know. Like,
The cops are corrupt.
yep.
That's right.
Yep, they sure are. So what we want to see in a case like in yours, John, is we want to see the lymphocyte differential, even like what kind of T cells are dominant, you know, are the killer T cells too dominant, or the regulatory ones too low, you know, because the regulated ones are ones that control the overactive ones. And then some of that's thymus activity, because the thymus is called, the T is also, they're taught white blood cells. It's the teacher. They go there for teaching. They go from the bone marrow into here. Some of them do, the T cells do at least. But that's, you got your neutrophils, and those are the highest amount of white blood cells. And they're sort of the main, they're like the macrophages. And it's a large, you know, 50% of your white blood cells are neutrophils. Next level down to lymphocytes. And then there's monocytes. And monocytes are like the garbage men. They go around, and the monocytes will always go up during cleanup, during cleansing. So you got to be ready for that and tell the client when they get their blood work, you're going to have an elevation of monocytes, and then you're a genius. If you don't tell them, you're in trouble. So you want to be the genius and to tell them ahead of time, hey, your monocytes are probably going to go up. And then there's below that basophils and eosinophils. And if the eosinophils are raised at the bottom, those are like the gnarly super cops. And they're the ones spitting out oxygen and superoxide dismutase and all those free radical. And then they got laser guns that can dissolve your cell membranes, basically. And so you don't want to see those ever elevated, because when they're around, that's the parasites. So when this one that's normally 1 to 2% of your total white blood cells goes up to 3 or 4 or 5, it's a sure sign that there's something going on that's such we want to differentiate all that. Because we know that your lymph system is clogged or slow. We don't want to put too many bad images in you. So we know there's we just need to speed up the escalator. And I think that the lymph herbs, I mean, Lars saw in like what, 2 days that swelling, 1 day, 2 days that swelling went down.
Yeah.
So we got your garbage men working better, because the garbage cans were backed up. That's what you were seeing.
Yeah.
But you're not swollen anywhere, really, are you?
You know, I've got.
I'm going to turn the recording off. Goodbye, folks.